Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Filled with stories of inspiration, Loving Our Life's Work podcast shares examples of courage, perseverance, and triumph. Our guests are examples of people who are actively living their life's purpose, and they've come to share the vision of their life's work with us today so that we can learn to give ourselves permission to live ours. Of course, if you feel you gained some inspiration from this podcast today, or we've added value to your world, please subscribe to follow us for more content. Comment, hit the thumbs up on this podcast, and of course, share it with someone you love who you know would also benefit from hearing this amazing story. I'm Adam Devaney, clinical social worker and founder and CEO of the Life's Work Positivity brand. Today, we have with us Rodasi Campbell. Rodasi is a mama, monk, priestess, author, and recovering alcoholic. She's also an entrepreneur and has found a love of the science and art of crafting and curating service to others. I'd like to start by thanking Rodasi for coming and hanging out with us today and sharing with us.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for having me. It's so exciting. And man, that sounds like a lot what you just said. Is that me?
I'm going to say, Rodasi, that from what I know of you, that was a very minor introduction. And I wish I had another 20 minutes to share all the different aspects, but I am going to leave that up to you. When this podcast is all about sharing purpose, meaning, our callings as they're delivered to us. And so if you were to sum up in as succinctly as possible what it was that you see as your purpose, your calling, that brings you here, and really you can't resist sharing that with the world. What is that, and what does that feel like to you?
Well, I love that you asked what does that feel like, as well as what is that. And as succinctly as possible, I would say I was very young when I really desperately needed to understand why we were here. Why do I exist? What is the meaning of all of this? And things like Star Wars helped me, mythology helped me. Um, I, I, I would say spirituality and some aspects of religious philosophy helped me. Nature helped me to discovering some of those things continue to help me discover what that is in an experiential way. And so one of the terms, which I need to just correct that introduction just a bit, I'm no longer necessarily an active monk. I distanced myself from the organization that I was a part of for a very long time that helped me to become who I am today. It was instrumental in helping me to heal self and serve in healing humanity through healing the self was the slogan. And that's why I think I was created. That's why I think I exist, is to remember and to help other people remember.
To share that magic.
Yeah, and you said, how does that feel? And that's really important to me because as we evolve as human beings, we go through different stages, and it's not linear always. I don't think it is linear. There is some degree of linearness to it, but I think we're more like lotus flowers or roses that are unfolding, unfurling continuously. And so we might get mastery or seem like we've mastered some trauma or some old way of behaving, and then we come into this new echelon of existence, and we have a new level of that to integrate, to turn towards, to heal, whatever you want to say, to change. And the felt sense for me, here's the trick, is to not get like addicted to just collecting books and things for my head, or even going on different trainings and retreats and things, which I love to do. But where am I felt sense tuning into that, attuning to that every day throughout the day? And when I miss the mark, which I do every day, many times a day, and and the thing is that that is a part of an integral part of a very crucial, never can do without part of this incredible journey of discovery of what it is to be a human and a divine being in this world. But in the beginning, Adam, I was chasing down all of this information to try to fix myself. And that mechanism can get turned back on at times. And I can forget that this is about a felt sense of my relationship with the divine, a felt sense of my relationship with peace, a felt sense of my relationship with being, this vessel or this container or what have you. I think vessel maybe that allows for flow. And is that flow happening, or where is it not happening? And can I settle into the moment and allow for awareness and then reattune? And that is where I think people get hung up, is that we think our healing is going to be linear, our growth and our ascension and our enlightenment is going to be linear, and then we're going to be done. We will have reached the summit. And that is not my experience, even though as a monk, I continued to go to it, quite literally a summit, go into the cave of practice on the mountaintop, and didn't want to return to the world, and kept being told, you must. This is where you're going to, like, the rubber meets the road. And also that's where you're going to reach the people who need to remember. So it's a felt sense. It's not just a collection of principles and beliefs and philosophies and things, even though I love those. It is super simple, and it is stillness and silence and peace. It's an empty void that also can include all of the pain and chaos of this entire life and all of the exhilaration and joy. So that's what it feels like.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. When you get to that space, and listeners of this podcast will hear this from me many, many times, it is like the grass growing or the wind blowing. Yes, there are inputs into it, but none of them are forced. And when we exist in that space, so many things are possible that align with our authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
When we're in that space, when we're in that center, that's where we find our purpose. That's where we find that our power lies, our natural, inherent power. If you want to say it was the reason you came here, I'm good with that, right? It's different for every single person, what that space feels like, what that space looks like, how they operate from that space. But given that so much of society is seems designed to drift us off that center, when I meet people who have rediscovered that center, it's always inspiring to me. Have you met other people in your life that have shown you what that center looks like from an experiential and feeling standpoint?
Golly, yes. And you're one of them, and your wife is one of them, and actually, quite honestly, an enormous amount of people. And that's, I talk to folks, I meet folks who do not have that experience, but I think that sometimes it's like where we're at, and I can't recognize the forest for the trees. Like, I know that there is a large percentage of the population that primarily is walking around like 95% of the day in unconscious programming. They don't know what that is. They don't understand what that is. But I know people, I know so many people in who are not well known. They're not. It's not like Oprah and Deepak Chopra and Krishnamurti and Sadhguru and whoever. Like, it's normal people who are just compelled and cannot not do their thing. I know musicians, who do this. I know artists, other forms of artists who do this. I know druids. I know Christians. I know people, principals. I know a groundskeeper right here across the road, mowing lawns and knows how to be in that center and be grounded and surrendered. It's normal everyday people, but also, of course, I've had people in my life. I mean, I had a what we would call like a spiritual teacher or guru for over a decade, and to hold such a level of commitment to staying attuned to that space and helping others cultivate that same experience is, I don't know if there's much more that I respect and admire than that. However, the people who are out here and they don't have this whole thing built up around them like that, like an organization where it's just dedicated to that. People are out in the world, in the trenches, doing whatever it is, school teachers, yoga teachers, the landmine of entrepreneurial, like survival and doing our work, and to continue to walk that balance beam of staying in surrender and centered and heart centered while all stuff isn't working and I'm like about to flip out because I've totally fall off the balance beam, or like my child, or my health, or whatever. So life continues to do life, and where I am prone to go, shift my state along with it, and to get back on the balance beam. Anyway, you asked about who's inspired me. Like, I really want to just say I could list off all kinds of people know about, but there was this fellow that I met at I spoke at a church for a few years, and this gentleman was in the congregation, and he was a coach, a basketball coach, and also a principal. And I'm not gonna say that he totally knew how to be in that center all the time, but what he did know, and this is what he kept sharing with me over coffee now and then, keep your head down and keep doing what you're here to do, and one day you look back and you're like, wow. I mean, I touched people's lives. I used up the juice that was given to me. I got some certifications and awards and accolades along the way, but that's not why I was doing it. And I needed to hear that at that time. So it's people like that who just are committed to what's before them, and striving to do that the best they can, because that doesn't come naturally to me. What comes naturally to me is to escape, to grasp, to be in lack and victim consciousness. That comes really naturally to me. I've had to work hard, and I still do every day, to work diligently, devotedly, to shift that, and to be one of those people I look at and marvel at, who nobody knows their name, nobody knows their face, but they're everyday people who are showing up and giving what they came in here with,
It's wonderful to see that. And if you're looking for it and your eyes are wide open, you will see that
Mhm.
often. And it is encouraging, for sure. And I think about like your background, right? Your upbringing was with addiction,
Mm, mhm,
and that has really played a role in influencing the direction of your own life in multiple areas. And one of the things that seems to be more or less universal across the board that I'm finding with my guests on this show is that our experiences, good, bad, or otherwise, often, our struggles help us on the road to finding that drive, that calling, if you will, a purpose. It shapes that us. It informs that process. Can you share with our audience a little bit about how your life has helped shape and inform this process for you?
Well, yes, I look back on everything and even recent things, and but especially those formative years, and early recovery, um, which, as a woman in recovery, recovering from alcoholism is one way to say it. I mean, I have almost a decade straight and many years behind that of exploring and discovering what that meant for me. So for the better part of the last 20 years, I have been in recovery consciously. Um, there's definitions of all of that. Every time, let's say one returns back to use, it is called a relapse or a return of symptoms or a return to use. Um, this has reinforced what I've learned. So first of all, let me just go way back. That questioning of why we are here, why I exist, what this is all about, came from scary, scary circumstances of a little girl who was being taught about a God and a Jesus who was gonna protect me if I was a good girl, and yet every day in my home, there was violence, chaos, unpredictability, and I intuitively just knew there must be something beyond both of those things. And it pushed me to seek. It did put me into it created my character, and it as well as, like, those traumatic, things, living with PTSD, for example, and not knowing what that was. I didn't know I had PTSD, I didn't know I had trauma until after I had my first child, and my doctor, and my therapist, and my chiropractor all told me. And I was
Wow.
like, "Well, this answers some things. This is, like, helps?" And then it's been in all of this time, 18 years of me unpacking what that looks like in my body and my behaviors and my feelings, and falling in love with that instead of making it a poor me story that continues to allow me to not take responsibility for my life. It's Yes, I have done that some unconsciously, and but all of the adversity, all of the challenge, all of the pain, all of the terror, all of the trauma has pushed me to really just want to understand love, pushed me to want to understand where samenesses are, pushed me to want to understand our differences and what a beautiful mandala that is versus the warring and the lines in the sand, that it feels so, like such a tear in my consciousness, such a tear in my soul. And then in exploring all of the, spiritual principles that I've been given, whether it's been in 12-step recovery, therapy, shamanic healing, soul retrieval stuff, just sitting in nature, sitting for thousands of hours in meditation, just silent meditation, not being guided, having to contend with all of my resistances, and also discover the massive, gorgeous beauty and preciousness that's in there. All of that has been such an amazing journey of, like, integrating and the revelation that these spiritual principles that are all over the place on the planet, in every in every corner, indigenous practices to organized religions, like the principles, the essence is that, like, if we believe in separation, we're gonna be looking for love in all the wrong places, and when it feels like there's something separate, that our source of love is separate from us, we are gonna go looking for it. And that all pain pushed me to go looking for it. And I remember when the first time, Adam, I went to Spain, which was not my first encounter with the organization that I wound up being part of for, this beautiful yogic science organization that gave me my spiritual name, which is Rodasi. It's Sanskrit. But the practices, you know, in essence, brought me to the real teacher, brought me to the real healer, brought me to the thing beyond that organization, beyond names, beyond Sanskrit, beyond 5,000-year-old teachings and principles, but to the thing that I was told all along. My first time going there, my editor of the magazine I was working for at the time said, "You know what? You're gonna find out probably later on that you didn't need to go anywhere to find what you were looking for, but you totally have to go take this journey in order to figure that out." And that is the catch-22 of life. So pain, suffering, struggle, trauma, all of the stuff we're seeing going on right now, gives us not just the opportunity to be like, find our convictions and things, but to go even beyond that and retune our nervous systems, our attention just in this moment. Like, I don't even wanna make it sound mystical and like it's complex. It's not. But sometimes you need all of those tools, because of all of the layers of conditioning and the pain body and the issues in the tissues and the habits of the unconscious. You need tools sometimes, and you need support and conscious a support that can mirror it back. I have anyway, I should just say. I haven't seen very many people not need this. But, it has all pushed me to get outside of comfort zone, to awaken from being lulled by this crazy game of life and this culture that we live in that fuels addiction, fuels escapism, fuels being unconscious, tells us we're separate from our heart's desire. When I sit really silently, and I'm sure you can tell me if it is true for you too, when I'm just here with myself, there's nothing I need. There's nothing that's missing. There's nothing that needs fixing. Like, yes, there are things that I can work to change or allow for change to take place, but, um, if I'm looking for love within myself, I find it every single time. If I'm counting on other humans or circumstances, even circumstances in my body to be a certain way in order for me to be okay, this is what pain has given me. I can't count on you for that all the time. You know? I can't count on circumstances to go the way that surely cannot. I can't wait until I don't have a migraine headache or my hormones are totally balanced and I have all this energy and I, am in some perfect state. Pain has always helped me to either dump over into victimhood or take the possession back of myself, take my power back, if you will, which is the only sane place, really. And and so all adversity, all of it, every part of it, even stuff I still don't understand, is this magnificent piece to, um, be like, the universe is just looking at you in the face going, "It's time, and you got this, and I got you." You know? I got you. So, hope that answered the question.
Well, I love where you went with that. I love the way that you describe power. I think this will transition beautifully into my next question for you. And that discussion of power, of of when we drift off of that center, and so much of society is designed to encourage us to drift off that center. And when we go out there and we consciously, purposefully say, I am pulling that power back in. I am going to find my power again. And whether that's through overcoming trauma, overcoming addictions, overcoming the drama from the trauma, there's so many different ways that we get to that point. And when we're just simply fed up with the victim mentality, or we're just simply fed up with uh, the process of giving our precious power away, looking for someone outside of us to provide that for us, right? And there are plenty of those. There are institutions out there waiting for you to give your power away to them, right? So that they have power over us at that point. There are so many aspects. I've often heard myself saying, it seems like all of society, like every aspect just about of society, it seems to be designed for us to like give our power away. And when we retain that, we pull that back in whatever process we're using, and that is something for everybody to figure out themselves.
Mhm.
What resonates with you, what feels authentic to you, and how you do that is going to be a little bit different for every single person. But the concept is the same. And that concept is retaining that precious power back in yourself. And where do you find that? You find that in being quiet. Where do you find that? You find that in empty space. Where do you find that? You find that in meditation or prayer, right? We can look at prayer as talking to God. We can look at meditation as being quiet enough to hear his response,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I have so many experiences in my life that I could share that where when I was quiet enough, when I was at that point where I was ready to just pull that power back and retain it for myself, and I was quiet enough that the little voice came and was like, okay, you seem to be ready to hear me now, so here's this. I love those moments. I love those moments. And so I want to ask you about when you did that important inner work and you had a metamorphosis of sorts that came out of that process. Pulled that power back and you were like, okay, I'm not necessarily going to be attached to the international organization that you were talking about, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to go through some sort of a chrysalis and metamorphosis, right? And and then that process happened. Yeah, I'd love for you to share that process, as people need to hear more about those processes.
So I'm feeling incredibly emotional right now. I want to state that. And it's partly because I haven't spoken about this publicly yet, really. And I, I want to say that that organization taught me how to find the living experience of oneness. Everything that was set up around it, the teaching, and gave me tools to then go share. I've got a little gnat flying around me. Um, to go forth and share these tools with others, which, you and your wife, imbibed in. I got to share some of those tools with you folks.
Yeah, that was some great training.
Um, part of the teaching around that, and by teaching not tools, some of the information that's conveyed is that of oneness, and that the true yoga means to unite. And to unite, you can, come up with whatever you want. For me, what it is uniting my attention with this moment, bringing myself back home. And can I stay here? And you see all the thousands, millions, billions of ways that you don't feel like, surely I can't just rest right here. And that underneath of that habit of wanting to leave oneself is a sense of self-worth. And that underneath of that is a belief that I'm separate from God. I'm
Hmm.
separate from my creator. I'm a separate from love. God is love in my experience, that there is this is source. This is the source. And when I come back home to myself, I'm plugging back into that living experience. My nervous system can operate appropriately, optimally, and my mind, I might have to go through a little detox So the organization taught me how to do that, gave me the tools and then the dedicated environment to do that. But as a human, there was a hierarchy within this organization, and you start to project just like you did with your parents that this is now God. And I have to go through this person in this organization and do it this way in order to have this experience that is really real for me. So when it came to the time for me to leave, our humanness gets things muddled up, like, it's the experience, and if I leave this organization, this teacher, this relationship, these tools, this way of serving, this identity, will I still have the experience of oneness? And I could not believe that I had done the same thing as the religions that had, not worked for me in projecting onto this human that I needed to go through him in order to get to God. And yes, I needed to go through some detoxing after that. It was terribly disturbing because what that also meant, my friend, is that I had also just unconsciously and vicariously then transposed that in my own teaching. That I had something that other people didn't have, and that they needed to go through me to get it. And I didn't I felt horrified in this recognition. So, the detox from alcohol and drugs, and the detox from codependency, and the detox from the addiction to running away from life, even into spiritual practice, and the addiction to putting God outside of myself and therefore not fully taking responsibility, and then continuing to cultivate that in other humans. Horrifying, and yet so beautiful, so very important to notice. And so I spent 2 years after leaving that organization not really teaching much, not working with, um I taught in treatment centers. I worked with people in treatment centers. I was like, I my identity changed so much. I went from being just mostly an entrepreneur to 9 to 5 in the trenches, no longer, doing the things I was doing before, no longer having what I had before, and that dismantling, I just kept saying, "I feel like I'm in a cocoon and I'm caterpillar goo, and I don't know which end is up." And I know this is so important for me, and, there were moments when I couldn't wait to, like, find myself again, and yet I was far enough down this adventure of life and discovery in the path of awakening and what you wanna call, I will say, recovery from this unconscious state, like, the unconscious being in charge, to, what I needed to do was in some way, like, not do anything I had been doing before. Do completely different stuff, and then find my way back to my tools in this really fresh and innocent way. Find my way back to the practices from a place of innocence and curiosity, and, also having a tired nervous system, on the other side of it too. Because when you stop doing your practices, stress starts to build up, and you're dismantling and detoxing, and you're working really hard, and you're helping a lot of people in these new ways and finding things new about yourself, but self-care as a single mom, working all over the region, so it was more than 9 to 5, but, it it's awesome. I'm grateful that I went through that. It's not the same process as discovering that still silent center of myself and pulling power back, reconnecting to power source is what I wanna say in my practice, but it was a whole 'nother level of allowing for life to be the teacher, for my life to be the teacher, not for someone who is telling me this is how it's supposed to look and be, you know, and this is the way we do things if we're in integrity, if we are good, if we are, doing it the right way, and, so it's been fantastic to come back around to getting to know myself here at this place on the Candyland board of life and reintegrating my tools and falling in love with them and beginning to share again with the world, and in a way that is still held accountable, because I believe that we do need physical mentors and peers who will hold us in sacred space and allow us to fall apart and discover more about ourselves, as well as then still not treat us like we're anything less, but continue to hold us and, like, see us as this powerful, magnificent creature that we are. Both of those things. When you have someone like that in your life, and I've got quite a few, it's precious. It's precious to have someone who's not just trying to help you through this thing more quickly, but is holding space for you to fall apart and do those things that you need to do, whatever it is. And like you said earlier, there's a path for everyone. My tools and the way that I convey my experience isn't going to align with or resonate for others, and neither will yours. But there is a way for everyone to go through whatever they need to go through in order to recall their power and to reconnect to their power. And the universe, the day before I left that organization, Adam, I didn't, there were other people who were choosing to change their relationship with it. And I was certain that I wasn't going to. And then the moment hit me like lightning, like life does, and I knew that I couldn't stay and I had to go. And within 24 hours, I just knew that that was so. And in that revelation, I had the accompanying revelation of the things I shared with you about where I had placed my power, and then not being a person who was teaching from a place of shared power and as a guide, as a focalizer, but as someone who had something that others didn't have, because that was what the environment I was living in. So yeah, it's been quite the exquisite journey, and I needed to go through all of that to get what I have today, but not everybody has to, you know?
Everybody's going to have their own version of that journey, right? And when you're seeking, and this is kind of a word that is maybe overused and little understood. But when you're seeking, really what you're seeking is you. Really what you're seeking is your authentic self. And so much of that is lost. And kids aren't taught that. We're not taught that in life. In fact, it's kind of downplayed if you really want to get down to it, right? And when you're seeking, that's what you're seeking. It's that center. It's that place where you feel like you're at home. And so many people will, I believe, resonate with your story on that last day that you were with that organization compared to the very next day. So many people have had that experience with so many different institutions in our world. And when we get back to that and we pull that power back for ourselves, and we realize, wow, we've been given this away. This is ours. This is our birthright. This is who we are. This is our authentic self, and we've been giving it away. Many people will leave that organization, whether that's a job or a church or a support community, right? When many people have had that experience, and there's not really a forum for us to express what that's like. And really not a forum for us to express as a society what it's like to then lose that community and then have to rebuild that sense of worth, that sense of belonging that comes from being that community. And then we're laid bare at that moment. We're laid bare. We're vulnerable, right? We feel in some ways maybe abandoned. We worry about what the future looks like. There's maybe some dread there. Where do I go now, right? But yet at the same time, in that experience, there's that core of, wow, I am making this decision. I am really honoring myself in this moment, even though I've got nothing but trepidation about what the future may look like. But I'm honoring myself. And I'm here to say that reconnection is empowerment. There is a beauty in that experience. And so many of our listeners, I'm sure, have had similar types of experiences. And I know I want to honor that in them. And I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely. I mean, as you're sharing, Adam, I'm like, people, this is addiction, this is recovery, this is growth. It's not even necessarily that there's always something wrong with the job, the relationship, the organization, what have you. Sometimes it is, I need to change my relationship to these substances. It's not maybe ever been a good idea. Definitely, there are situations that we need to get out of, but it's not always the case, and I think sometimes it's harder for people to recognize I'm I'm not in the thing that's pushing me to grow and be the healthiest version of myself, or pulling forward what I'm most capable of within this scenario, or just simply the call of my heart is to go elsewhere. To go, I don't even know where I'm going, but I must walk away from this. That's brave, and everybody does know what that's like, and it is so brave to walk towards the unknown, and yet that's what we like, the unknown. This is what I've discovered. I Everything you just said, sometimes I miss this international group of people, and yet then I stop for a moment and I go, "I still am connected with so many people." Like, it's a thought in my head that I no longer have this thing. It's just that, the structure has changed, and I have to be the one to go out and cultivate those relationships or maintain them, which is cool. Good. Move, move it, sister. Let's do this thing. Let's make connections with people. Let's reestablish connections. Let's see who somebody is today. Because man, having community and then not having it is it does leave you feeling untethered and lost and vulnerable. But that I think that state, being in that state of presence, being fully present, and then having um, that like we're exhilarated by the unknown, and yet we're terrified of it too. So from one second to the next, we can kinda, like, go back and forth between those things, and you can just decide, like, "Whew, yeah, of course I'm scared. I've been in something that's been certain, and therefore I could be in some level of unconsciousness." You know? And that was, like, not taking full responsibility for my state, for my life force, for what I have to contribute here, how I can be of use, and the exhilaration can pull me forward into, like, "I don't know, let's find out what's gonna happen next." And, I decided a long time ago, well, I still have to work at this, please hear me, but I decided a long time ago that anxiety was never gonna probably leave my nervous system completely, that it seemed to always show up when I was gonna do something important, and that I needed to discern between, like, that red flag that comes up on us and the exhilarated anxiety of, like, "Wow, I really wanna do this. I'm super excited about it, and I'm terrified, and I'm gonna lean into this." And I looked at that as the power dial, or Shakti, as it's called in Sanskrit. That Shakti dial is getting turned up so I can go do something cool right now, something I haven't done before. And the same thing with the unknown. I'm terrified, but am I really in danger? Or can I get excited about what I might be able to create with my life? Because, if I'm in the known, then I can only just keep having the life that I know. If I'm in the unknown, there's an opportunity here for me to actually change that relationship with money, change that relationship with my self-dialogue, change that relationship with my body, begin to explore life in a new way. And so thank you for bringing that up, because it takes courage, man. It is not like, your signpost is gonna be, "Oh, there's where the rainbows and butterflies are." It's gonna be like, "Woo! Holy moly, okay, we're doing this thing." And sometimes it's a quiet niggle until it turns into that, you know? There's a quiet sense of, like, "Something's off here. Something's not right here." And we've cultivated, and we live in a culture, as you've shared and I've shared, that will assist us in giving away our power so we don't listen to that niggle, but we can all start practicing listening to it and supporting each other and doing the same. And that's what I am doing with the recovery work that I do and the spiritual soul recovery work that I do, what I do for myself each day. And, thank you for the work that you're doing and reminding me that like you exist and your wife exists and that all these beautiful people exist that are part of my ecosystem that can mirror back to me. I'm not doing this alone. None of us are doing this alone. And it's good to do it together.
I was listening the other day to probably the 10th time in a row, one of Ed Milet's podcasts. I love listening to Ed. He's very inspirational to me.
Oh, he's beautiful. I forgot about that guy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If anybody out there is not listening to Ed Milet on the regular, check him out. It's definitely worth listening to. And he was talking about how when he was younger man, he noticed that his father didn't have many friends. And he kind of started feeling a little bad for his father. And so he brought this up to his father and he said, "Hey, why was it you don't have that many friends?" And his father said, Eddie called him. There's something you'll understand as you go through your life. And that is that everybody's just in your life for a season. It may be a little bit of a longer season, right? But it's just for a little bit. And the seasons, they come and they go and they ebb and they flow, just like life. And you are a mom to a young girl, right? Young, like
Yeah.
8 years old, right? Mandy and I are parents to a 6-year-old, right? So, when my friends are like, "Hey, man, we just don't really, I don't see you that much." It's like, oh, I own a business and I have a farm and a 6-year-old, and where to find me. I'm here. There are a lot of seasons to life, right? And I think the more we embrace that that's how things go, that we let go of the guilt or the longing and that sort of thing. But when we leave a big organization like that, or we leave a church, or we leave a job that seemed like a great job for a few years, it's just part of this seasonal cycle in our life. And when we pull that power back and we retain it for ourselves, and we say, "You know what, I'm worth investing this risk, the risk of leaving, right? The risk of starting something else, right? I'm worth that." And when they survey people who are octarians in their 80s, right, and they ask them, like, "What's your biggest regret?" Okay, almost universally they'll say something to the effect of, I wish I'd taken more risks when I was younger." Because when you're in your 80s, let's face it, getting out of bed it's fraught with risk for many people, right? And their risk-taking days are over. Okay, you're in the twilight years. And so take those risks. Be true to yourself, right? Have the courage to make the powerful decisions for yourself. We all know, when we look at Dr. David R. Hawkins' scale of consciousness, we know that shame, guilt, anger, fear, anxiety, even false pride, which is super prevalent in our world these days, all of those are weak. They're not coming from a place of power when that's where we're making our decisions. The power starts at courage. The power starts at acceptance, right? The real power starts at love.
I love
and when we come from those places, right, we make powerful decisions. and we can
Mhm,
pull that power back and,
mhm,
and cease giving our power to other people who, frankly, cannot appreciate it the way that we can as an individual. They will never be able to fully appreciate that energy like we can.
mhm. Yeah, I wanna say that's what we do in relationships, and certainly it's helpful if you're with someone who's, like, on your level, that gets what everything you just said, it's helpful. Then you can kinda go back and forth, "Oh, I was just projecting on you," or, you can have shared language and shared rules, but people do this where I'm trying to get power in your validation and your approval and your attention. This is one of the, cool things I came in with, and, it's a good signpost when you know what one of your things is that you came in with, or I don't know if I came in with it, but certainly if you wanna say karma, it's part of my design, and to recognize, like, any little moment where I'm doing that, or any big drawn out thing where I'm doing that, I've just reverted back to this, erroneous state of believing that God is outside of me.
Mm,
And as I said earlier, I just wanna say, for me, the experience is God is love. There's a higher consciousness, I don't wanna get into somatics so much, but that place of coming back home to ourselves in a visceral sense, shifting attention back here plugs us back into the only actual real power source that there is. Otherwise, my attention is out here and I'm leaking power all over the place, and I'm gonna start trying
mm,
to project it onto anything, and therefore am susceptible to become addicted to anything, including trying to make everybody else accountable for my happiness and my well-being. And, and people will be very happy to allow you to do that sometimes because that's part of our sickness, or, yeah, I'll just call it a sickness, an epidemic in the unconscious of humanity, and we all have it. "Yes, please be dependent on me, then I know you won't go anywhere." But, and then, whatever those things are for us. But you were just sharing you just reminded me of the simplicity, Adam, that um, love is the power source, the main power source, and you don't I used to be so baffled about how to find that. I read all these books when I was 18, 18, 19, 20, 21, before I found my practice, and even then, I was still baffled for a long time, but how do I do that? Don't give me a platitude about, like, you just need to love yourself first, Like, I would throw books across the room because I was like, "This is BS, man. Like, I can't hear this anymore. Like, tell me how to do it." I was craving and longing for the living experience of that. And you just, what you were just sharing just wove that back for me, that the essence of whatever we wanna call what we're doing, for me, I'm specifically working, wild medicine, recovery, my coaching and programs, and the things that I'm doing currently, the teaching of meditation and human consciousness work, parenting, parenting myself, whatever it may be, is all the essence of it is how do I best support myself to be in the best state possible to remember to keep coming back to that? Like, what else is there? I mean, what else is there for me? There's all kinds of other cool stuff like you were sharing. Our authenticity comes from that place. I don't go get the authenticity and then feel centered. Like center, and then all of a sudden, I started being able to walk into rooms and have people's respect and admiration, and they didn't even know why, and I had once looked at a woman who would walk into a room who was comfortable in her own skin, and I was baffled, "How do you get there?" So, all of a sudden, I became this thing that I longed for, and it wasn't because I was out there trying to look a certain way and talk a certain way, even though I did those things, it was because I went inward. And I just wanna tell anybody who's listening, if you've struggled with being a collector of belief systems and tools, and you haven't found that robust living experience of yourself at the center of yourself, this power source, this power that Adam keeps speaking into, this power then can be easily radiant and shared. But you have to recognize, you could allow yourself to recognize. I would invite you to begin to recognize how you've habituated looking for love in all the wrong places. And if you're looking out here at all, or even trying to change your thoughts, oh my gosh, that's exhausting too. Like,
Yeah.
attune, find a way, find a practice, find a support system, whatever, to attune and shift your state to that. Even sounds like too much. Like, you can do it, is what I wanna say. There's a path for you, there's a tool for you, there's a community for you, there's a way for you. Be open to it, please. It's available to you right in this very moment, and the first time I heard that, I wanted it to be true, Adam, and, I was a young, suicidal, traumatized, alcoholic young woman who was spiritually so incredibly sensitive that everything, this whole world, felt like too much to me. And somehow, my friend, and I know I'm not the only one, somehow I am still here today. And the experience of life is very different than that. So if you're hearing this and you can relate to what I just said, there's a this is it's chiming in your heart, because it's like it's ready to come alive. And for those of you who have already done your work and already know what that experience is like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we get to every single day find refinement in that and add to the frequency of that which counters this cultural conditioning of being asleep and addicted and in pain and suffering and needing big pharma or, whatever to take care of us, you know, um, instead, this collective consciousness of attunement to love, not faking it, not giving myself better thoughts about being loving, but attuning my nervous system and where my attention is at to that power of love. I love that you said that, Adam. Oh, thank you.
My pleasure. I was listening to Dr. David R. Hawkins give a lecture while I was driving in to here to do this interview with you, and I kept thinking to myself, why do I not listen to him more often? Because he is really amazing, and he just puts everything so succinctly. And when we have that, the challenge in our society, in all of civilization, really, is that once we have someone who wants power over us, who is more than willing to take it, right, and we give that away, now we've entered into a potential abusive relationship.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter if that is a substance or person or organization, right, or a government, right, which is made up as uh, a book from Firefly says, governments are made up of people who are usually decidedly ungoverned, right? Once we give that power away, um, and we enter into that relationship, it's very difficult to extract ourselves from that. It feels almost like um, it's
Dangerous.
what's that?
It feels dangerous. I've heard from other people, and I could share for myself. It feels dangerous to exit those
Yes,
situations.
exactly. It does. It feels like it's going to that we're going to get devoured, right?
Mhm.
It's one of the six types of fear that are most common in people that Napoleon Hill talks about, right? It's like it really comes down to like the fear of not even existing, right? Because if we don't have that validation, if we don't have that attention, if we don't have that support, right, maybe we won't even exist, and we're terrified of that, right? It's like when I work with people uh, who have all these repressed emotions that are leading to thoughts, that are leading to behaviors that have been repeated so often that they go right from trigger to this like false belief, like they're not safe, they're never going to be successful, they're not lovable, all these things that are just not true, right? And they finally come into a space where it's like, oh, we can just dig right down in there. We can bring them up. We can release them. We'll just do that one by one until they're gone. And they're like, "What? You mean it's safe to do that?" No, it's totally safe to do that. And we
Mhm.
just haven't been told that it's safe to do that because the people who might have told us were part of the institutions in society that would really rather just have that position over us.
Mhm.
So when
Mhm.
we retain that power within ourselves, and we come from a place of love that is not singular, love that is all encompassing,
Mhm.
that is for ourselves, for others, we enter into a realm of potential for really the highest calling, which is really just being of service to others.
Mhm.
And we give ourselves permission to do that in whatever way is unique to us. Right. And I think sometimes people really, as people, we really want that just sort of franchise model. Like if I'm going to help people or I'm going to be in service to people, if you can just tell me how to do that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't make any judgment on that for anybody one way or another, right? People love a sense of belonging. And if organizations give that sense, share that sense of belonging, then fantastic. Plug into that if that works for you. Right. If not, extradite yourself from that and find that in yourself. Right. Pray, which is talking to God. Meditate, which is listening for God. Right. Do the important inner work. And when you do that work, you'll find that center. When you find that center, figure out how you can amplify that and be of service to other people.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, beautiful. I find in recovery work, and I know we're closing in on time here, um, when people aren't able to feel that sense of unconditional safety, they don't they can't do the work. And when they are faced with authority figures versus peers, that can be difficult. When they're faced with people who are trying to follow a formula or a franchised thing, that can be very difficult, which is so frequently what happens in treatment centers, just
Yeah.
because that's the nature of the operations. Do you know, like, 2,000,000 people of I don't know how many millions of people who have addiction and substance use disorder will find their way into a treatment center this year, and of those 80%, these are statistics, recent statistics, 80% will have a relapse. They will go back to their environment, which they weren't taught how to cope within or what to do differently, or they weren't they didn't shift state, they didn't find what they needed in their environment. They extracted themselves from their environment, which sometimes is really necessary and life saving, um, and then they go back and they don't know how to cope. They don't know what to do. And there was
Mhm.
no depth of discovery and no return of soul retrieval, of calling those parts back home. You talked about unpacking them, and I'm calling, let's go to the underworld and take a walk together and let those pieces come back to us and reintegrate them. And which is the work that you do. I speak in it in more of a shamanic way, if you will, but it when people don't do that, they walk around not feeling whole, that not feeling safe, and so in the recovery work that I do, it's so essential to be trauma informed, to recognize that unseen realm, to know that shadow work, if you will, the soul retrieval, the recalling back home, so that people can then all of that done, if people don't have a sense of purpose and feel useful and have ways to be of service, it's still not gonna stick. That's what I've seen. And so, thank you for bringing that to the attention today. It's not just that certain people can be of service. It's not just that somebody who's got all these years of experience in spirituality and health and recovery can be of service. Anybody can have that in any moment of any day. And it's helping develop that the recognition of that and the self-efficacy of that. Like, I didn't have that. I wanted that, but I didn't know that I actually had any worth. And, there are moments when I still can feel that way, Adam, when I'm, you know, slipped off the beam. It's just a program that's in there. And, I catch it and come back and keep moving forward. But like folks who haven't recognized it need the kind of support that we're talking about. And so thank you once again for doing what you do. And, anybody who has been in recovery or had a hard time staying, on your journey of self-discovery, of calling yourself back home and staying clean and sober, or staying away from whatever behaviors have been undermining your happiness and your well-being and, such that you just maybe, like, there's just more, There's just something you don't know yet, something you haven't discovered yet. That's all. That's all that's going on. You're not, um the fabric of you, the essence of you is not fundamentally broken or what not, is what I used to walk around feeling shame and like the fabric of me, some part of my essence was just fundamentally broken. And I'm here to tell you that that is the biggest lie. And it is not true, and it can't possibly be true because the God that I know doesn't create anything that's a mistake. The experience of your soul essence is exquisite, and it might feel very far away, it might upset you to hear that, but, because it used to make me upset to hear this is possible for you, and I'd be like, "Yeah, right. How do I get there?" Um, but it is. It is possible. There's a way. There's a way for you.
And it is as unique to every person as each person is unique. And so we are coming to the end of our time here, which I feel like we should just keep going for another 2 hours. Uh, this is some good stuff here, let me tell you. And I appreciate that. What if there's one or two things that you really feel like you want to get across to our audience as they look inward, they look outward, and they find their balance and that authenticity? What would it be that you really want to share with our audience?
When you talk about looking inward and then looking outward, I love that because I just was listening to a talk about the different levels of being through the yogic perspective, and um, we do have several layers to us, but here's the thing, as a meditation and consciousness teacher, I hear many people say that they can't go find that space within them because they're having thoughts, or their body's uncomfortable, or they're too emotional, or it's too distracting, and all of that, let me tell you, doesn't matter. None of it matters. You're not failing meditation if you're distracted. You're not failing meditation if you're having thoughts. Tools are there and available for you to exercise a muscle, and you can't exercise the muscle unless there's some distraction that occurs as well. That's the exercise. Keep coming back. And that is also the external. Uh, I'm going to keep practicing behaving the way I want to show up in the world with the people that I have the hardest time with, the moments when I go most unconscious. And I'm going to look at it like it's a playful game and let the universe bring me back to playfulness when I get like my Aries brain my Aries makeup or whatever wants to be so serious about this whole thing all the time. Like, let's lighten up a little bit and let the universe, sometimes it makes me angry when I get distracted from my poopiness. And then I'm like, "Phew," like a second later, it's like I was just insane and I'm laughing at myself. So bring joy and playfulness into it. Look at this, like the video game of life, like this incredible Candyland board video game, and you can't get it wrong, you know, you, like, really can't get it wrong. You can't get meditation wrong, and you can't get practicing, like, wrong. I gotta say one last thing. Please hear me when I say that living authentically, like, living whatever that means, living our purpose, living our light. I just watched the movie Soul. I have a sick one home today, and the movie Soul, if anybody hasn't seen that, I was like, "This is so good." You know, we think our purpose is in a specific thing. Like, I want to be able to build a business around my spiritual work in this world, and yet it's not working, and I'm, like, trying to make it work so I can make a living and not just pay my bills, but thrive, and this is just one example, you know. I know being a musician or being an artist is my purpose, but your purpose isn't what you do, I've learned, and that movie says this too, your spark, you know, your spark, I think, is beyond that, and I just would like to invite everybody, and myself included, to keep coming back to whatever, like, where's the spark at right now, and keep following that, and then not be afraid when, you know, the Shakti dial gets turned up, because if you're on the right track, it's gonna get turned up, you know? So let it be a signpost to keep going, not to run the other way. That's what I've got.
Awesome. And embrace the seasons of life.
Mm.
Things will come and things will go, things will ebb and things will flow.
Mm.
That is the nature of it all.
Mm.
Rodasi, this was incredible. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. And I want to thank all our listeners, of course, for listening to our show today. And of course, you can learn more about our guests by following all the links below in the description. And as always, I want to remind you to search your heart, do
Mm.
the important inner work, and give yourself permission to find your purpose and live your life's work. Thank you again for listening today, and thank you, Rodasi.